welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about something that I know I always get a big response to whenever I write about it on my blog, and that is singleness. But specifically within that, a question I know I've really wrestled with and also has come up in conversations with all of my friends who are still single, and that is when it comes to dating and looking to meet somebody, what is my role in that? Should I be waiting on God or should I be taking initiative? I'm going to be sharing what I think the answer is. Just go ahead and get started. So back to our question, should we be waiting on God or should we be taking initiative? And I think part of the problem, part of the reason there's such a confusion around this is that we hear really mixed messages even within Christian culture. On the one hand, we hear things like, wait on God. Tell me if you've ever heard any of these things. Just trust God. It'll happen when you least expect it. Don't try to control things or focus too much on it. Just run as fast as you can towards Jesus, and when you see somebody else running beside you, that's when you look up. And then on the other hand, you hear that you need to take initiative. Tell me if you've ever heard any of these things. God's not just gonna bring you somebody when you're spending your Friday night in your sweatpants watching Netflix. Or put yourself out there. Put yourself in the path of somebody you're interested in. Have you tried going to other Christian churches? Have you downloaded Christian Mingle? So we're hearing all these different messages, and I think that it creates this sense of confusion, but beyond that, it also creates a sense of guilt for somebody who's wanting to meet somebody, because then you start to think, well, am I not doing enough? Did I miss the boat somewhere? Did I not do the right things? Or am I doing too much? Or if I put myself out there in this way, is that me not trusting God, or is that me trying to take control of something I shouldn't? So what is the right answer? Should we be waiting on God or should we be taking initiative? If we look to the Bible, I think that it does give us an answer, and the answer the Bible gives us is both. On the one hand, you've got the story of Ruth and Boaz, and this is the one that always comes up in these conversations. If you're not familiar with the story of Ruth, Ruth is a Bible character who is actually married, but her husband passes away, and she makes a vow that instead of going off on her own back to her family, she's gonna stay with her mother-in-law. You may have heard the Bible verse, where you go, I will go, where you stay, I will stay. At first, Naomi, her mother-in-law, doesn't really know how this is gonna work out for Ruth, because she's like, well, I'm not gonna have any more sons, so I don't know how you're gonna have another husband. But they end up deciding to go back to the country that Naomi is from, and there is what's called the kinsman redeemer named Boaz, and so he's this strapping young eligible bachelor, and lucky Ruth, he's the one who is next in line to marry her according to the cultural customs of their time. Only thing is, Ruth now has to get his attention, and so her and Naomi come up with this grand plan that Ruth is going to begin to work in the fields that Boaz owns, and she's going to start gleaning the wheat or whatever it was in the field, I don't know. Essentially, she's going to be putting herself in his path, putting herself in a position to be noticed by Boaz. Ruth even takes it so far as to sneak into this dude's bed in the middle of the night and lift up the covers from his feet and tuck herself in there. This was considered to be extremely scandalous, but it worked. Ruth landed herself a Mr. Boaz, the two of them got married and lived happily ever after. And so on the one hand, you have this story of somebody who is taking initiative, putting themselves out there, doing things proactively to make something happen. But that's not the only story the Bible shares. So on the other hand, you have the story of Isaac and Rebekah. If you don't know who Isaac is the son of Abraham, as in Father Abraham, who had many sons. Isaac is Abraham's son, and as Abraham gets to the end of his life and his son Isaac is still not married, Abraham's mission before he dies is to make sure that he can find a wife for his son Isaac. And the one rule was that Isaac could not marry a Canaanite woman, which is where they were living at the time, and so that posed a little bit of an issue. So Abraham had his most trusted servant come to him and swear an oath to him on his bedside that he would return to the land that Abraham was from and find a wife for Isaac. So the servant goes off to Abraham's homeland, and as he gets there, he gets to a well and he's praying to God, and he says, Lord, let me know the one that Isaac is to marry by the fact that she'll be the woman who comes to the well, and I'll ask her if she can draw me something to drink. And her response will be to say, sure, I'll draw you something to drink, and I'll also draw something for your camels. And the Bible says literally, he hadn't finished praying those words yet when lo and behold, up comes Rebekah, and that very thing that he prayed happens. Isaac now has himself a wifey. Did Isaac do anything to make this happen? No. Literally, his dad's servant was sent to make it happen for him. Did Rebekah do anything to make this happen? No. She was literally going about the tasks of her day-to-day life, drawing water like she probably did every single day, and she got herself a husband. God ordained their paths to meet So basically, the Bible has stories of both, of waiting on God, of God totally being the one to orchestrate it and to make it happen, and also of taking initiative, of stepping out and putting ourselves out there and God working through that. I think that the reason the Bible includes stories showing it being done both ways is perhaps it's trying to tell us that neither way is wrong. So maybe we shouldn't be asking the question, which way is right or which way is it supposed to happen? But maybe the better question we should be asking ourselves is, which approach is wiser for me in the particular season that I'm in? I think sometimes we want to go to people asking people to tell us what the right way to go about certain things is because we want that assurance to know that we're not doing something wrong, which isn't bad, but I think more often than not, God wants us to come to Him and to allow Him to be the one to guide our specific steps. The Bible is filled with principles of wisdom that we should be operating within, but at the same time, God is a relational God and He wants to be the one who guides the specific steps that we take. He wants to walk with us and talk with us as He's guiding us on the unique path that He has for us. I think that we love to look at the stories of how it's happened for other people. We love to hear those stories of how people have met. One, because those are fun stories to hear, but I also think that in hearing those stories, we're hoping to maybe find some sort of clue for how it might happen for us. And there's nothing wrong with that, but I do think it can be misleading because God works differently in each and every single one of our lives. The story of how it happened for them is not going to be the same story of how it happens for you because God is writing a story in those people's lives that is different than the story He's writing in yours. The stories of how it happens for other people can be descriptive, but they're not always prescriptive. Let me explain what I mean. The stories of how God has worked in the lives of other people, they can show us how God is able to work in our lives, but they don't necessarily show us how God is going to work every single time in our lives. A big part of knowing how God is guiding you, not just in dating and singleness, but in any area of your life, is to pay attention to the trajectory that He has you on and to pay attention to the season that He has you in right now. Are you in a season where God is asking you to step out, to be bold, to take risks? Maybe He's trying to work out some sort of fear in you. Or maybe you're in a season where God's asking you to surrender, where God's asking you to trust and to let go and to rest and to not try to control everything in your life, but to really just let go. For me personally, God's asked me to do both at different seasons in my life. The key is really to just pay attention to what season you're in, what themes are continually coming up, what's coming up in conversation, what's coming up as you read the Bible, what season does God have you in right now, what is He trying to have you do? Maybe you're coming out of a relationship and you just broke up with somebody and there's a period of healing that needs to happen, and God isn't asking you so much to step out and to put yourself out there and to go on dating apps and to try to make things happen, but to simply just take time to heal. Or maybe you've been single for a really long time and you've never really put yourself out there and there's a lot of fear surrounding that. God might be asking you to step out and to take some risks and to put yourself out there. It all comes down to knowing what season God has you in. And the really beautiful thing about this is that when you're sure of the season that God has you in and you're sure of what He's asking you to do in this season, then you're not going to be swayed when you hear all this conflicting advice, which you will continue to hear. You might hear something like, it's going to happen when you least expect it, and you can think, you know what, that might be great advice, but it actually doesn't apply to me right now because God is asking me to step out. Or maybe you hear, you just need to put yourself out there, but you know that that's not what God's asking you to do in this season. The last thing I just want to encourage you with is that you are not doing it wrong. God's timing is different for everybody, and just because it hasn't happened for you right now does not mean that you're doing something wrong. I just want to release that burden off of you because I know that it can be confusing, and then when you hear all these different things, it's easy to question if maybe you're not doing enough or maybe you're doing too much, and then you're second guessing yourself, and not only now do you have this desire for something to happen, but you have this guilt on top of it that you're not doing enough to make it happen. If you're putting yourself out there and doing things proactively to try to make it happen, that's not you not trusting. And also, if you're not doing things and putting yourself out there, that's okay too if that's where God has you. The important thing to remember is that if you're staying in step with Him, if paying attention to the ways that He's guiding you in the day-to-day, then you can 100% trust that He is going to guide you right, and that in His timing, what's supposed to happen is going to happen. So that's what I have for you guys today. One last thing I did want to tell you about is that I just came out with an online devotional for singles. A couple years ago, I came across the words of a blogger who I follow and admire, and she got married, I believe, toward the very tail end of her 20s, and she wrote something that has stuck with me to this day. And she said, you know, when I was single, it felt very vulnerable for me to write on singleness, but now that I'm on the other side of that, now that I'm married, I really wish that I had written about singleness more while I was still single. And that really just stuck with me because I realized, you know what, this is the season that I'm in right now. I want to be able to say, I did everything that I could to take my experiences to help other people who are also in this season with me. And so I decided to step out and write this devotional because for me, like I said, I am single, but there's so many days where I don't even really think about that. My life is full of so many good things, but for all the days where I don't think about it a whole lot, there are days here and there when it's all I see, and I just wonder, God, when is this gonna happen? And on those days, I know that I'm just looking for something to speak into my situation, any sort of encouragement or hope or advice. And so my heart and my commitment as I was writing this devotion was to pour the encouragement that my heart has needed to hear on those hard days into other people who are also in this season. And so in this devotional, you'll find personal stories, you'll find lessons that I've learned along my own journey. If that's something that you think you might be interested in, I'll leave the link down in the description for you to grab that online devotional. Also, this is specifically written for singles. Really, it can apply to anybody who's waiting on God in some sort of area of your life. Again, the link is down in the description, and I would love to hear what you think about it. That is what I have for you in this video. I hope that was an encouragement to you. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and to also hit subscribe. Again, your support to me seriously means the world. I loved reading your guys' comments on my last video, and I would also love to hear your thoughts on this topic. So leave a comment below, tell your friends about this video. Again, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.